Okay.
Whoa.
I'm muted. And I'm not even a panel.
Council will call the meeting order. For the record, it is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 at 4:30 PM. We'll begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Taylor?
Here.
Councilman Overton?
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts?
Here.
Councilman Cavanagh?
Here.
Councilwoman Strader?
Here.
Councilman Borton?
Here.
Mayor Simpson?
Here. Next time up is the Pledge of Allegiance, which tonight will be led by Andrew Vanderveen. If you'd like to come forward and lead us in the pledge.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
thank Andrew for being here today. I had a chance to meet with Andrew before the meeting. Nice young man, very inquisitive and insightful about Meridian and our parks. And Andrew, I just want to say this is probably the best Pledge of Allegiance that we've done all year. So thank you for joining us today and doing a great job. We sure appreciate it.
Absolutely agree. Thank you for being here, Andrew. With that, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
no changes, so I move that we approve the consent agenda as published for the mayor to sign and clerk to attest.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we will go on to department commission reports. First item up is item 11, impact fee assessment deferral agreement. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Sorry, 1 second, Mr. Neri. Councilman Borton.
Just making a quick record, I'm recusing from any consideration or discussion of this topic, have an interest in the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, for the public's benefit, the city collects impact fees for Ada County Highway District at the building's permitted stage of all developments. That's an agreement that's been ongoing with the Highway District for many, many years. And occasionally we run into situations based on the request normally from the developer of the property to defer the payment of the impact fees to a later point in time rather than at the building permit stage, but maybe to a later point based on economic reasons for varieties of reasons. They negotiate that with the city and with ACHD to collect it at the certificate of occupancy stage. That's what we've done here with this particular property. ACHD is obviously the driver of that. They're in agreement of the deferral. City is fine with collecting at the later point in time. Again, we do control both the permitting side as well as the occupancy side. So on this particular occasion, again, we don't do it very often. We probably in the last, I think we looked since 2019, we may have done it once. So it's not something that's done a ton, but it is an offbeat. So because of that, we want to make sure it was on the agenda for the council to approve it separately.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. Council, any questions for Mr. Neri?
Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Just because I'm curious, is the deferral, if the city were to change impact fees from the time that the deferral was approved until occupancy and the impact fee would be set to be paid, changes? Does this lock in at the date of deferral or once the day that it would be due?
Mr. Members of the Council, Councilman Cavanagh. So they're calculated now. at what they would be due today. We're just deferring the collection of it to later.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Or do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
move that we approve item 11, the impact fee deferral agreement between the City of Meridian, the Ada County Highway District, and JTR Holdings for the property at 105 East Carlton Avenue.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 11. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Recusal noted, not responded to. With that, we'll move on to item 12, which is for fiscal year 2024 budget amendment, in the amount of $35,000 for purchase of an additional unmanned aircraft system. Lieutenant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that said, my name is Kyle Ludwig. I'm a lieutenant with the police department, and I am the commander assigned to the UAS or drone program currently. I'm here to request a budget amendment not to exceed $35,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new large frame drone. Following the double homicide incident in town, we realized that there was a safety gap presented while we were searching for the suspect, trying to monitor the scene and conduct yard-to-yard safety searches during that time frame. We exhausted the equipment we currently have on hand. Thus, we had officers on search teams going into areas that were unable to be cleared, unable to be provided Overwatch 2, putting them into an unknown situation, which is rather precarious for the officers and puts them in danger. Additionally, once we located the fleeing suspect, we were unable to adequately track him, losing him at times as he was continuing to evade law enforcement, which inherently puts the public more at risk as well. We feel that this one-time expense would give the police department an additional large frame option. This allows us to fly in more inclement weather, colder temperatures, hotter temperatures than our current fleet does, and would grant us the ability to provide constant coverage for our officers while they're conducting these high-risk operations. I will thank you, and I will stand for any questions from the council.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Just a quick question. I'm supportive of the budget amendment, but one of the things I've learned is when we bring new equipment on, it's not just about now, it's about a replacement cycle of the said equipment. So can you help kind of the council understand, and maybe there's a larger conversation when we go into budgets about what is the replacement cycle for UAVs? Do we look at them the same as computers or motor vehicles or something in between? Just help me kind of understand what the lifetime ownership of this particular product is going to be for the department, barring any circumstances that would make it unusable.
The lifetime or the expectancy of those pieces of equipment, we actually just did 2 replacements this last budget cycle and added an additional piece of equipment to the fleet. The replacement, we purchased our last large frame drone in 2021. That is still completely operational, but with the separation of the city into the northwest station and the central station, the idea would be is that we could have adequate coverage with both drones covering both of those areas of this community. The replacement cycle is really contingent on software updates, technology changes, which are obviously hard for us to predict, but we're continuing to operate with the 2021 drone with adequate software updates, and we've made some modifications to cameras and upgrades there, but the actual equipment is still fully operational. So it's hard for me to hypothesize. I would say somewhere between 5 and 7 years, we're looking at a potential replacement. And a lot of that's contingent on what technology has changed, not necessarily the breakdown of the equipment.
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I think, you know, I'm the PD liaison now, and so I think that may be something that we can work to with finance and the team to come up with what is a expected replacement schedule for UAVs. Recognize they're still somewhat new, but to give, I think, future council some understanding when you purchase a new piece of equipment, barring it crashes, suspect trying to do something to it, we'll get X amount of years over it, so we can really understand what the lifetime of that expense will be for this.
And we're trying to actively, once I took over the program, Councilman, is actively tried to place those in the CFP so we can kind of forecast out, so we're not getting inundated with replacing the entire fleet at one time. Well, let's try to do this strategically, and that's been my plan when I took over the program.
Great. I love hearing that. Look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Councilman Overton.
Yeah, Ludwig. just for clarification purposes, that when we're looking at a large frame UAV, we're not trying to replace personnel. We're not trying to reduce the number of personnel needed. I believe we're trying to make it so when we use them at large-scale operations, we use them and deploy them in a much more efficient fashion.
Yes. It's much easier for us, taking an incident where we have an outstanding violent suspect. If we get a drone up into the air, we can start identifying potential hotspot reads through thermal imaging that would identify where a potential suspect is. We can quick clear other locations because there's no hotspot readings there, or it's been identified as small enough where it's going to be an animal or something of that nature, where we can bypass those locations and go to where those real heat signatures are. And when we're trying to apprehend a suspect, a heat signature that's concealed or hidden in a deep corner or something of that nature, we can provide that information to the officers on the ground, let them know, hey, there's a potential threat location in the deep northwest corner of this next yard, and they can approach that in a much more efficient and safe manner. So yes, it gives us the opportunity to quickly deploy officers in a much more efficient way.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Taylor.
Thank you. Lieutenant Ludwig, I appreciate you bringing this. I have a quick question. I'm the new guy. Could you please just real briefly explain what you currently have for assets here? And I understand kind of the difference as you've described it, what we have, but could you just kind of describe the current assets and the limitations that they have?
Yeah, so, and just so I can reference some notes, if you don't mind. We currently have on hand an M300, which was the original large frame drone that we purchased. We just recently purchased this fiscal year an M30, which is, it's considered a large frame platform, but it does have some limitations as compared to the M300 or the M350, which is the item that we're attempting to get this amendment so we can purchase. The biggest difference is battery runtime and flight time. Some of the batteries have limitations where they can't charge in extreme cold, so it takes longer for them to charge when they're being deployed in the outdoors. Sometimes upwards up to where they have to be 41 degrees or warmer for actually get a charge onto them. The biggest difference between the large frames really is flight time. So the ones that we've just recently purchased this last year, the Mavic platform, the max flight time or hover time, which ideally is what we're trying to do, is hover up above so we can provide overwatch, is about 30 to 35 minutes. Typically speaking, we're going to rely on the lower end of that. I think the manufacturer specification is 33 minutes, and that's given no wind in the laboratory setting. These new drones and the large frame drones can support flight time of up to 50 minutes, which obviously that's a pretty big difference in time frame when you're talking about downages for returning the drone, battery change, and then getting it back deployed. And that's really where we've seen that. Whereas if we have an extra large frame drone, as we're putting one up, we can get one in position, and with their anti-collision software, we can actually have one operator flying two platforms, send one up, and then bring the one that's down. Now we have that 55-minute time frame to charge it up so we can continue to constantly just defrag those. The problem with the Mavic platforms is that they can't operate at very cold temperatures. So as soon as it gets below 14 degrees, they're not operational, so given any circumstance in the last couple of days, we would not be able to utilize those platforms. And then they can't operate in any sort of precipitation or high winds. Also, especially during the winter time and the winter months, are going to limit the opportunity for us to utilize that platforms. The two large frames, the M300 that we currently have and the one that we're requesting the amendment for, those can function in rain, snow, winds in excess of I don't have that here. Well, yeah, my fault. 12-mile-an-hour winds, whereas the other ones are 10.5-mile-an-hour is their wind resistance speed. They can fly out further by an additional 1.5 kilometers. And then again, the flight time is really the big thing with the battery changes. They come with battery warmers in the cases they deploy, so the batteries are constantly staying warm enough to be brought up to temperature to use.
Council, any additional questions?
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
there's no other questions. I move we approve the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment in the amount of $35,000, purchase of an additional UAE unmanned aircraft system.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve item 12. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
just if I could, a quick comment. So I had the I don't know if you call it opportunity or privilege, but this incident that you're describing, I watched it from my second story window of my house. So when you mention 30 to 35 minutes and 50 minutes, that's a significant deal. And and I watched the drones working and I watched the officers, and what was pretty amazing about the whole thing is my kids were asleep. You know, it ended, you know, I could see it. Kids didn't know what happened, neighbors didn't know what happened. It was operated, it was quiet, and I saw the drones doing the work. And I'm convinced that that's led to other people not being harmed in the situation. And so I'm very supportive of it. And I do think this is an incredible asset to add to that in terms of officer safety, but also community safety. So I think it's a great addition. And you might think 30 to 35 minutes up to 50 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, but I can just say in that current situation, that would have been a significant difference. And so,
Especially when trying to apprehend someone who's violent in public.
yeah, and to consider there may be circumstances outside of our control, like weather that could inhibit what we have. So I think this is a really smart addition. I'm fully supportive of it.
Thank you. Council, any additional comments? All right, the clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taylor,
Yes.
Overton.
Aye.
Little Roberts, Cavanagh.
Aye.
Strater, Borton.
All ayes, motion carries. The item is agreed to.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Cal. Nice to see you here. With that, we're at the end of our meeting. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton,
we adjourn.
motion adjourned. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.